Hello, everybody. Welcome back again. I know we just finished an amazing presentation from the Laurie Center. I mean, I got to tell you, we are so honored to partner with them and provide them anything, support and donations that we can provide through this conference. Alan Isakawi is, like he said, like family to us, and so are the children and that establishment in general. So thank you all, every single one of you, for donating and participating in today's event. I have the honor and pleasure to introduce our next speaker. I think the themes that you guys are hearing today is really understanding what's going on in the region. People are sharing what they know and what they don't know. But the biggest trend is we are really moving from this industrial state to a digital state overnight. And I can't help but continue to say, this digital transformation that corporations have been trying to do for years, COVID-19 is leading that charge. But the thing is, with Karen Hollinger, who I'm about to introduce, who's head of strategic initiatives for Avalon Bay Communities, she has been focused on innovation even pre-COVID. This is not a once and done, this is now it's happening, we got to get involved, right? This is a very strategic path that Avalon's been on for a very long time. And so I had the pleasure of being introduced from, I believe it was Andrew at MIT, and Karen has been doing a lot of great keynote speeches at major CRE tech conferences, and I'm really honored and excited to have this presentation from you and hear about Avalon Bay's blueprint for growth through technology and innovation. So Karen?
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So Karen Hollinger, Senior Vice President of Strategic Initiatives at Avalon Bay. We're one of the largest institutional owners and managers of multifamily housing in the United States. So we are a large institutional REIT with just under 90,000 units, 14 geographies, basically the coast, East Coast, West Coast, Denver, and Miami, with about 3,300 employees. And I've been with the firm for 19 years, and even prior to that as a consultant. So I suppose no one goes in thinking they're going to be a multifamily expert, but at some point it sort of seeps into the blood. So I've really seen this evolution of how technology and innovation can really propel an organization forward. And I can't even imagine how we could operate without technology at this point. I mean, certainly development and operations are an expertise, but the efficiency it gives is pretty amazing. So I thought maybe I would take you on a journey of technology and innovation and start with maybe 10 or 15 years ago. And I think the journey, while it is multifamily focused, actually has a lot of lessons learned and applicability to commercial as well. So follow me on the journey just for a few minutes. So maybe 12, 15 years ago, we said, you know what we really need is we need a new property operations platform. It needs to be one platform for the nation and one way of doing things for the nation. And so I guess I always look back at the journey as to what was the argument du jour, right? So the argument of the point, let's say 12 or 15 years ago, was, can we actually create a consistent data dictionary? So if you've ever had an argument on what economic occupancy is defined as, then you know that you're at the stage where you're really just trying to create a foundation. And so we did create that foundation, one consistent system, one consistent way of doing things. You know, New York always says they're different, but we actually created a way that New York can accept and LA can accept. And so one process for, one policy for everything. And one data dictionary and one data warehouse. And so all the data was fed into the same system, and we could actually do reporting. And then you layer on to that centralization. So the idea that not everything has to be done at the communities. Once you've created this foundation and you have one way of doing things, then that process doesn't need to take place in 300 communities. That process can be centralized and automated. And so we worked on that. We created the customer care center in Virginia Beach and moved all the back office operations and automated the heck out of them. And then we bring that forward, let's say maybe 5 or 7 years ago, and then you start looking at the pieces and the parts. And so for each way that you do something, for each integration, right? So you have your property management system, but then you say, well, how am I doing credit screening? And how am I doing e-leasing? You know, how am I doing marketing and pricing and availability? And can I take lessons from other industries and do that better? And so that was sort of the 4-year, 5-year horizon where it was a pieces and parts. And so for each one of those pieces, you know, we really automated it and either made it less expensive or more effective or both. But in many cases, it wasn't just in the real estate industry, right? So for those of you who've been in the real estate industry for a long time, you recognize that we are generally a slow-moving industry. And there are industries such as media that, you know, or food and beverage or retail that have really started moving at a faster pace with some of these technologies. And so we stole lots of ideas from other industries. And in some cases, we got references for their technology because it already existed. They just weren't selling into multifamily. And so we brought it forward with the pieces and parts. And then a few years ago, we really thought about the leasing experience. So once you've automated the lease and you've automated screening, and you've automated payments and just everything along the way, you really can take the opportunity to think about, how do I operate a community differently? You know, do I really need people on site? And do I need people 7 days a week? Or maybe I only need them 2 days a week? You know, will the customer accept, or in some cases relish, the idea of doing things at midnight and not speaking to us? And so we really went really deep into each process and came up and said, you know what, we think the customer will accept this, and in some cases prefer it. Including, I have this wonderful story where we interviewed just tons and tons of customers in a particular demographic and said, you know, well, what if we weren't there to talk to, but you could chat with us? Or what if we weren't there, but you could actually chat with the computer, you know, which is AI, and the computer would tell you the price. Would you be okay with that? And, you know, really, every customer is different. Some customers will say, no, I really want to know a face, and I want to know a name, and I want to have consistency. And then there are other customers that are like, yeah, as long as the price is correct, you know, as long as you get back to me in 5 minutes, I don't really care that it's a computer. I just want to know what I want to know at that point. But I do remember this one customer, and she said, oh, I would love that. I would even pay more for that, which was a little bit of a surprising answer, because in real estate, no one volunteers that they're going to actually pay more for something. So we do think, or we came to a conclusion a few years ago that there was an opportunity to take technology and innovation even more, not just do it faster, cheaper, better, but actually do it in a way that in some cases took our staff out of the loop. Now, even though our staff weren't going to be in the loop, we still need to understand what's going on. And you do that through heavy reliance on CRM, which we use Salesforce. And of that, or based on that vision, we came up with our new brand, which is Kanso, K-A-N-S-O, which is the Japanese word for simplicity. And our first new development opens actually this fall, November, knock on wood. So you know, this is like the breaking news for us, that we are going to open a building in Rockville, that is not going to be staff-based. So that community will be completely automated. And so, folks say to me like, well, what does that mean? So what that means is that based on you wanting to see the community and doing an ID verification, then you'll be able to go in and see the community without us there. There's no one scheduled to be there, and that's through smart building. So that's technology. Really, you'll hear smart building a lot, but basically that just means that you're using automated door locks for the common areas, for the apartments. Maybe you're using cameras, smart cameras with computer vision. You're using smart sensors so that you can control occupancy. Smart thermostats, so you're not heating the building when it's not in use, so you can control your energy usage. Smart garage systems that will know that you're allowed to park in that garage because your license plate is registered or it's not. Smart leasing, so that based on your customer profile that you've already been screened, that you will already be generated a lease, that we do not have to get in the middle there to do that for you. You've asked for the pricing and you're okay with it and you've already been approved. The building has really been built with this concept that we need to take the manual effort out, heavy reliance on AI, which is, I guess 3 years ago, I would have been shocked that AI had gotten to the point that it is, but it's pretty good. And basically, we were able to teach the AI how to respond to questions because we had done that original foundation. We had done that consistent platform, consistent data dictionary. And so we had our CRM, Salesforce. So we already had all of our conversations. So, millions of conversations. So we were able to train the AI on how to answer. And it actually is shocking that it does work. And people can be speaking with the AI at midnight and get pricing and availability and all sorts of policy questions answered. And it can take a minute to get that answer. And then this particular building, because there's no one on site, we chose not to make it a complex building. There's no elevator, there's no gym, there's no pool. There's really nice units. And the combination of that, physical structure that's been built to suit for no staff, and the combination of technology allows us to lower our price to the customer, which is really what everybody wants, to be able to offer a price as the amenity. And I would say, in addition to price, we've been able to use proptech pretty heavily, not only from an efficiency standpoint, but also to use all these, various proptech partners as an amenity. So because you're in the building, you get a discount, or you get a service, or you get something because you're in this building that you wouldn't get if you weren't leasing. So I guess, just to sort of summarize, foundation is really, create, you're there when you're arguing about the data dictionary. And then 5 years later, you're there when you're asking about whether or not it's too much to do 65 integrations, which is where we are, right? How can I do one more integration and make this work, make this animal work? And then today, I would say, you're there when you're actually having arguments about why do I need someone to do that? Isn't there another way to do that? And of course, all of this is to say not every demographic is the same, not every building is the same. I would never think about this sort of compilation if I was doing a high rise, as an example, or if I was doing, you know, a 500 unit urban building. Totally different. That the issues are different, certain jurisdictions are different, and certainly certain demographics are different, right? So there's going to be certain demographics that really want that high touch, and they're willing to make the trade-off between price and service. But that's sort of the evolution of technology and innovation. And with that, let me see if there are any questions. I don't see any. We do have one. Has pandemic sped up the use of AI and IoT? And I would say, heck yeah. So if you're doing, well, even not just multifamily, if you're doing multifamily, you're doing single family, even some commercial leasing, you know, IoT has become a prerequisite, particularly door locks. So, you know, it really is a shame when you have to send someone to the community simply to hand a key over, right? Because if the customer doesn't really want that face-to-face interaction, if the customer is happy with the virtual tour and they're happy leasing at midnight, and the customer is able to go on the website and get all their questions answered, you know, that customer isn't going to want to meet you at a certain time and have a key handed to them. And so certainly IoT becomes a prerequisite in order to enable that true self-touring use case. And then AI, yeah, I mean, we were already on these journeys prior to the pandemic, but I actually think the pandemic not only has sped it up, but like, why wouldn't you, right? As long as you have accurate, consistent data and the AI can be trained and is a good tool, right? I mean, there's lots of AI tools out there. So I'm not saying one is better than the other. We're invested in one, but there are others out there too. Then why would, even if you have a high service mentality, you know, a very high touch face-to-face mentality, you know, that customer is going to value the more complex interactions. And so at midnight, they just want to know if you have a one bedroom at that price, or they just want to know if the garage parking is reserved or unreserved. That particular interaction doesn't add to their feeling of high touch. You know, that customer wants the basics answered when they want them. And then, you know, certainly then if they tour and it's a guided tour, then they want the relationship, but they've already gotten sort of the blocking and tackling out of the way. Let's see if there's any other questions. Oh, some really good ones. Is the future of multifamily design going to account for multi-generational living? So I'll first say we haven't researched this. So I hate answering questions when I don't have the amazing amounts of data that my organization proffers up on all these questions, because sometimes your gut is not the same as what the data tells you. But I'll tell you my gut anyway, which is, yeah, I do think multi-generational is going to establish a foothold in multifamily living. And I say that for two reasons. One is when I've researched other countries or continents, it's already there. And so generally, when I look at what goes on in multifamily in Japan or in some of the Scandinavian countries, I generally see a direct path that they do it, then we do it, right? It's not 100%, it's a good 90%. And I see examples of multi-generational, I mean, at least I've already looked at Japan and Denmark. And it's very normal there for them to do that. And so that means it's likely coming our way too. I don't know whether or not that's coming our way in a, 5% of the market or 50% of the market, because I don't have the data. But then the second reason is that multi-generational just makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, my children are grown right now, or grown, but when they were little, babysitting is really hard to coordinate, especially in a big urban area where there's traffic and the babysitter is, stuck 4 miles away, and that means an hour. So the ability for the family to help each other, particularly in urban areas, and the ability to lower the net per person cost is probably a good thing. So yeah, I haven't seen it though. I haven't seen it much in the US. So if the person who's asking, that's probably a good leading edge if they wanted to try to do some multi-generational. Let's see. Lease concessions. I don't know. I'm not a lease concession. I'm not a pricing person. I'm lucky enough at Avalon Bay that the overhead function is pretty large, and so we have pricing specialists and pricing data analysts, and I see the result of what they assess. And how do you combat hackers? Yeah, hackers is a good one. Not a good one. The reverse of good. We have actually our own vetting process for a lot of this stuff, where if it's got the potential to be hacked, we do pre-vetting. And I don't mean like light pre-vetting. I mean, we hire our own cyber company to vet that company before we engage. And it's not, it's not foolproof, right? Because, if anyone knows about hacking, they know that there's some guy who's spending 24 hours to hack you. And we just hired someone for, 3 weeks to come up with an assessment. So the level of effort is skewed. But you have to, you have to do all the due diligence that you can in order to avoid the worst case scenario. And so we do that, which is expensive, and it's hard to do. And it's particularly hard when you have all of the proptech money going out, and there's a lot of VC funds going toward technology, but that money is allocated for sales and for product development. It's not allocated for cybersecurity, ongoing cybersecurity fixes and care. Oh, we have a bunch more questions. Just give me a second. Oh, wait, budget. Well, there's a bunch of questions related to our inventory and what percentage is applicable and things like that, which as a public company, I can never share specifics on our inventory or our plans. I can share sort of generalities, which is, we're generally Class A, we have some Class B, and, do I think I'll paraphrase one of the questions. Do I think that technology and innovation is only applicable to Class A? And I would say no. It's applicable to A, B, and C. Do I think it's only a percentage of buildings? No, actually. When I think about Invitation Homes, right, well-regarded public company, I'm going to guess they're at 50,000 homes. They're growing, obviously year over year. But when we looked at their technology stack, a few years ago, they were ahead of us in putting in IoT. Well, of course they were, because they don't want to send someone to open a door when one house is 9 miles away from the other house. And so I don't think that a lot of these technologies are specific to only institutional or specific to only large buildings. I think sometimes even the smallest building, 4-unit apartment community can have the same returns as a 400 unit for certain technologies. IoT is a good one. Marketing is a good one. You know, if you can't increase your demand even for 4 units, then you're going to be thinking about pricing as your only competitive option. So I think with a lot of these technologies, you know, they apply to the entire market. Now, certainly, if you've only got, you know, I don't know, 500 units, are you going to be putting in AI? No, right? Because right now, the technology is at the bottom of the curve. And so in order to use those technologies, you need to have your own tech developers. You need to have your own ability to create an API and your own data dictionary and everything else that goes with that. But what we see with a lot of these technologies is that they start out, any technology really starts out being only applicable to the institutional owner of any sort. And then someone figures out how to make it mainstream. And then once it's mainstream, you'll see it sold sort of in a box, right? So if you think about e-locks, I'm just picking out something that's easy. You know, e-locks have been around forever. You know, not computer smart locks, but true like e-locks. You use a fob or whatever, or use a PIN code. And so I started tracking those in the student housing market, I want to say it was 20 years ago. And they were always doing it. We weren't, but they were, because, you know, they've got 10,000 beds, and I'm not going to get up in the middle of the night to let in some student who lost her key. Well, then you bring it forward. We were redoing the locks on our house, and I said, you know, why are we putting in new locks with a key? Like, this is, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago, and we went to Home Depot, and for $200 you got an e-lock, and it was, you know, from Schlage or something, and it came in a box, and it was, you know, 10-minute install, and then we had e-locks. So any of these technologies, they might not be applicable today, but in 2 years they'll be applicable to a wider population of owners, and in 5 years we're going to be putting them into our homes. It's just the evolution of how it works. Seema, I see you there. Are we at time?
We have just another minute or two. I feel like there's a lot of engagement, a lot of questions here. People are very intrigued by what you shared. I like, you know, from your newer brand that you shared, right? What, like, obviously we know the drivers. What have you learned thus far? Like, what was the research that said this is where people want to go, right? Like, you guys are taking a little bit of a chance here.
It is. It's a huge chance, actually. The driver really came down to data and looking at the demographics in particularly urban or ex-urban areas for the type of housing that's missing, right? So from a supply and demand perspective, just pure data, even in, you know, the Northern Virginia area has plenty of new builds, right? Mm-hmm. But you're not going to find a lot of new build that is affordable to the supply of someone that we would consider, you know, a recent college graduate. You know, so you have this huge, you know, demand for really nice housing at a lower cost level.
Mm-hmm. That's constructed well on top of that.
It's constructed well, yeah. that you know,
well.
Kitchen, mm-hmm. That you know, I don't have to worry about the HVAC going out because, you know, it's 20 years old, right? So they want new build, they want new stock, yeah. They want a very nice standard of living. But I just graduated college. I'm not making $150,000 a year. I'm making $65,000 a year.
Yeah.
And so really just looking at the data would indicate that there was room for another brand. So it remains to be seen. Believe me, a year from now, I'm going to be in some conference, and I was on the HIT. I watched the HIT conference, and at the end they said, you know, have you ever made a mistake? What's your biggest failure? You know, she was very, very, you know, politique, as she said, you know, maybe not moving fast enough or whatever. You know, that's my fear, is a year from now, you're going to be asking me, what's your biggest failure? And I'm going to say, let me roll the tape.
No, you know, I mean, I think next time I have to have you on our like the panel we're doing at the end is around affordability and affordable housing at scale, right? And it's truly, it's thinking about innovative ways to get to that place, because people they want to live well, but they want to be able to afford it, right? And especially as, you know, newer in terms of workforce retention and just trying to get and attract people. It goes back to my opening comments, you know, how do you really make this place, you know, the best place to work, live, and play, and attract entrepreneurs and innovation, because that's obviously a major trend in building in this area. So I think you guys are on the right path. I'm really excited to see where that brand goes. So kudos to you guys and that leadership. So Karen, this was an excellent presentation. Thank you so much for being on. I know you spent a lot of time with us prepping. We really do appreciate it. I want to just share with the audience, we have 2 final segments and then 1 virtual networking that's going to come up next. So if you can get an opportunity, the next 20 minutes, I would like you to leverage the platform again, go out and do the group chats, go meet people on the video chats in the group rooms, and, you know, go mingle with our exhibitors and sponsors. They have a lot of great information out there and great partnerships as well. Our last 2 segments at 5:25, we have the home stretch and mindset reset. As I mentioned earlier, you know, we've been talking a lot about change. We've been talking a lot about innovation, and that really, it needs a mindset shift, right? So we have Coach Adam Cobb here. He's a TEDx celebrity trainer, peak performance coach. He's worked with so many people around the country and around the world. And he's going to do a mini meditation with us and some movement right before our last session. And I think, you know, anybody who's been on with us from the beginning, having a little pickup for energy is going to be amazing. And then our last panel is on affordability and affordable at scale. And we have some amazing panelists as well, from AJ Jackson, from JVG Smith, Brian Lee from Common, Chuck Bean from the Congress of Governments, Andrew Trueblood from the DC Planning Office, and Janet Stephenson from Katera. So I would love for you guys to continue to join us. Enjoy your virtual session. Thank you again, Karen. Take care.